Okay. Last time we did not. We started talking about Tevillas Keilim. I hope this is working. Last time we started talking about Tevillas Keilim. Excuse me. And we talked about a whole bunch of questions about Tevillas Keilim that have to do, which things you have to be table, having to do with all the things that would have to do like in a home use, like a piece of china, different things like that, things that people would have at home. Now we're going to switch. The second half is going to be about businesses. Things have to do with businesses. There's also a bunch of questions about which things need Tevillas Keilim, having to do with with businesses. So that didn't work. There's going to be 4 topics. And the first one is packaged food. And you'll remember the last time we spoke about packaged food from the excuse me, from the side of the consumer. You have a bottle of wine, you have a jar of pickles, and you want to know, do you have to title it? Because it used to belong to a guy, now it belongs to a yid. It's glass or metal, and you have to title it, you don't have to title it. So there we spoke about 2 shittas. One was Maral Diskin, who said is that you have to title it, but you only have to title it when it's empty. You can't title it when there's food inside of it. And you can take your time while you empty it. That was Maral Diskin. And Ramosha said that you don't have to title it at all because it's not a kli. It's a packaging material that helps them get the wine from the factory to your house. It's not a kli, and it's not muchiv in Tevillas Keilim.
I think we'd say that Minig Oilam is clearly like that.
Okay, and it's correct.
Reuse jars without tabling?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It put stuff back. If you tell me to go to the Ramu Diskin, you have to pour back. You can put a pickle back in the jar. You can't put wine back in the. People don't do that.
Okay.
Hey, most
So,
of it, I know what I'm saying.
yes. So like most people will follow what I'm saying. Now, today we switched from the consumer to the manufacturer. So first we were talking about, can I put wine into my bottle? What about for the guy who makes the wine? If he's a yid and he buys a bottle from a guy and he puts wine into it. So the Maral Diskin obviously makes no sense. The Maral Diskin said, you can empty it solely, you don't have to tell him until you get it empty. Well, he has it empty. So that sort of doesn't work one bit for Mr. Kedem, who owns a bottle. Again, if it's a Jewish company, he owns a bottle, and he puts stuff into it. Of course, that doesn't help him. But what Ramosha said is still reasonable, which is that it's packaging material. Also, Ramosha says it's not a it's chayv and tila. So it's not chayv and tila for him either. So even if the manufacturer is somebody Jewish, that he theoretically is chayv and tila's keilim, so he's not. He wouldn't. That reason would still work. There's an extra reason, an extra thing is, which is a shiloh, not for today, a different shiloh, which is something that's only meant for storage, even if it's a kli. But it's like if you have in your house containers where you keep flour, I don't know, you keep cookies. There's a question whether those things, if you don't eat out of them, they're just storage containers, whether they're chayv and tila's keilim. The separate child might help them also.
Pickle jars like that.
What?
Like a pickle jar.
Yeah. Yes.
We said a pickle jar.
Yes. Okay. Well, some people do. Okay. So now, some people say, that this idea that it's only a packaging material and therefore the manufacturer, Mr. Kedem, that is not motiv to toilet, also applies if you buy a container to put shalach manos into it, or you buy the person who's putting the shalach manos onto it, or I'm putting food on. I buy a tray so I could send it to your house for Shalom Zachar. For me, it's just a way of getting it from here to there. It's just a way I can get the food from the 3 things I'm giving you for Shalach Manos to get them to your house. And there are those people who think that you're not. That's also because it's just packaging. From my perspective, just packaging material. And if I'm not muchiv in Tevillas Keilim,
Why should it not be?
what do you think?
Why should it not be?
Why should it not be?
I
Why?
think this is a Jewish person, then he could title it whatever, but if it's packaging material, it's not a kli.
Well, because it really depends. Because if you're going to eat off of it, you have to get to what happens if it's a little worse. In the case of Shalom Zachar, you're going to take it and you're just going to put it out the tray. You can put it out. Okay. Well, the case that the case that has to do with us as a Hashgachah, Illinois Nut sells platters of candy. Okay. So if it's owned by a Jewish person, I don't know if it's owned by a Jewish person anymore. If it's owned by a Jewish person, so then he has a tray that he owns. He's giving to you with a bunch of chocolates on top of it, and you take it to your house. And what do? You put it out and you eat off the tray. So
that's a different case then. Then even by the goy, it's like that.
Even by the guy.
What's the difference if it's manufactured by a goy or manufactured by a Jew? If it's considered a kli, it should be considered given by both. If it's not considered, it should not be considered by both.
So yes, but over here it's a little further in that this is meant to be eaten off of. That's what's going to happen.
Fine, and then there's a problem with the guy does it also. Then you can eat off
I
of
mean,
it.
no, so then we get to Maral Diskin, who says it's we play and did that. We have that kind of a svara, okay? But there are those who say that, in fact, the Surah says this, that for Moshe's svara even applies to Illinois nut, that the person who's when they're packaging it, for them it's just a packaging material, just a way to get it to your house. The fact that you're going to choose to eat off of it, so to speak, that's your business, and that you're mechuyev to tovel it. So they do not tovel their trays, even if they're metal or glass trays. They do not tovel them. But because you might think that they do, because you say, hey, I got it from a Jewish store, of course they toveled it. That's in many people's mind, they would imagine that. So they put a sticker that says on it, we did not tovel this, or requires tevilah. Okay, which is to say when you get it to your house, if you want to keep that tray, then you have to tovel it. Okay, because once you get the tray, then for you it's just a plain old tray that you put cookies on, and then you mechuyev to tovel it.
Would Moshe's svara apply with it?
That they're going to base on Ramosha.
What makes it Moshe?
They're going to base on Ramosha, an extension of Ramosha. That says for them it's just packaging material.
It's a little different, right? Somebody can make an argument. Some would say it's not different.
100% you can make it different, because here it's meant to be presentable. Okay, I meant to put on a tray, not because I have to get it to your house. It's not a cardboard box. It's a tray that's meant to be...
Put around on the tray, they might arrange it differently, whatever, it's a whole...
Whatever, it's a...
wax.
Yes, okay. Now, one case that I'm not sure about, which is a variation of this, which is, what happens if a Jewish company makes tuna fish? Now, tuna fish, you put it to the can, and then the can is metal, put it to the can, and then you don't just put it to the can, you cook it inside the can. After it's in the can, it goes to a retort to get cooked in there. So it's harder to say that that's just a packaging material. It's true. It is a way just to get it from the store, from the factory to my house. It's true. It is a packaging material. But it's a kli that you cook in. Okay? A kli that you cook in is a kli that's chayv in Tevillas Keilim. So this thing has many roles. First, it's a pot.
You cook it in the retort.
No, you don't cook it in the retort. You cook it in the can.
Cook it in the retort. The can is the can. It can't have to be just the can. The can is packaging. You cook it. I take the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel. I stick it in the cooking thing.
So you're not cooking. You don't cook in a pot. You don't cook in a pot. You cook in your stove, and then the pot is just a thing that.
No, the pot holds. The pot holds the thing. It's not. Pot is not a packaging. Nobody's going to say by my shady the pot is packaging. The pot is pot. Goes in the pot, out of the pot. But here it's wrapped in, sealed in. I think it's better. Sealed tight shut. And I cook it in its packaging. That's all.
It's pot.
Cook it in its packaging. It's not its pot.
It's like a can. If you start the other, which is that you don't eat out of it, so that would then...
No, because it's two different things. You're chayv to either if you cook in it or if you eat from it. Those are two different ways to be chayv to Tevillas Keilim. You don't have to eat out of a pot. So a pot is chayv to you don't need out of a pot either.
If you pickle in it.
If you what?
Pickle in it.
If you pickle what in it?
Let's say a pickle jar that you're pickling.
See, if they do the pickling in the jar,
Yeah.
okay, maybe then also the same kind of a question. I wasn't thinking like that, but yes, potentially the same kind of a question. Okay, so you think yes, you think yes, you think no. So, okay, that's why I wasn't sure. Okay, look at that.
I hate it hard, but I think that we make it more precise to say.
Okay, and next is restaurants, hotels. This goes v'chayina.
I'm not sure if this is again what you just mentioned, but there's a very well-known Hashgachah that gives a Hashgachah that's not chayv in tevilah for like a certain electric device. And I heard from very
Hashgachah. What? Because it's not Jewish owned.
No, that's
The opposite.
not the cheshbon.
Because the opposite, because it is Jewish owned.
I thought that was the cheshbon.
It is Jewish owned.
It is Jewish owned.
No. This company is, whether it's Jewish owned or not, it's not the cheshbon at all. The reason why they're doing it is because apparently Weissman don't give up sack for them, and for them, sack that the guy that owner, even if it's a wholesaler or whatever it is that will own it, they don't own it to be used as a kli, but rather just as merchandise to sell. And therefore it's not chayv in tevilah.
So you're only explaining one detail, which is what happens if the manufacturer was Jewish and the distributor was non-Jewish. Maybe that helps. But if all those people, if everybody until now was not Jewish, so I bought a kli, and I'm chayv in Tevillas Keilim. I bought it from a guy then. Well, my says, I'm the yid at the end who uses it as a kli, bought it from a guy. Your thing would only help, what you just said would only help is a yid made it, and then a guy distributed it, and then a yid bought it from him. So you say, the middleman doesn't count. Maybe that's right, and maybe that's wrong. But if you say all those people until now...
Why, if everybody until now, it was never considered a kli until it was by the yid.
So think.
The yid owned.
Think that through. What you just said. You said if you want to decide that those things are not considered kelim until they get to the person who uses it.
Right.
So then every time you buy a pot, it's not chayv in Tevillas Keilim because the guy who makes a pot.
Manufacturer, of course.
Every person who makes pots is making it just.
Never meant to include the manufacturer.
Okay. We're off topic. Okay.
I think Okay, that's not the smart we were talking
No,
about.
no.
Merchandise that is not for...
No, I won't talk about that. We'll take it afterwards. Okay. We're talking about restaurants and hotels and things like that. Now, for reasons that are not so clear, Hashgachas feel responsible to oversee Tevillas Keilim for food service. Okay? We not feel responsible for Tevillas Keilim at manufacturing companies, but we do feel that when it's a nursing home or a pizza shop or something like that, we make sure that they type all their things. Okay? Well, whether that's right or wrong is not for today. Okay? That's an assumption that for food service we make sure they title everything. Okay? So, starting from that perspective, Dayan writes it like this. He says, the person, if there are dishes, not that he cooks with, dishes that he serves you with, okay, I think if in restaurants they give you on plate, he says, for the person that owner, it's klei schora. It's not something that he eats on. He doesn't eat on these things. This is not for eating. For him, this is just a way of doing business. It's part of business is that he has to have plates. And therefore, these are business items. They're not food. They don't cook on them, nor does he eat on them. And therefore, he's not chayim Tevillas Keilim. Okay? He says the klei schora, and klei schora not chayim Tevillas Keilim.
Again, a food service guy owns a kitchen. He has pots and pans and all that stuff.
So the pots and pans are going to be chayim Tevillas Keilim. Those are going to be chayim because he cooks with them.
Okay.
He cooks with them. But the plates that he has and the forks and knives that he gives for the customers, he says not chayim Tevillas Keilim because it's klei schora. For him, he doesn't eat with them. He doesn't eat with them, nor does he cook them. So it's a question. In the middle, he talks. He says basically, does he ever sit down and eat them? And he gives an answer that I didn't understand. Okay, I don't understand how he answers the question. What about him eating?
I don't understand the difference again between the stuff that he cooks with. Is that he's using? I cook with him.
He's cooking with it. That's what, think that you're chayav either if you cook with it or if you eat with it. So he cooks with it. Fine, it's chayav. But this he doesn't cook with it. He just eats. This is
But nobody's chayim Tevillas on stuff that he eats with.
So he says
customers,
correct.
The owners, nobody.
Correct.
All
Now-
Jewish, but nobody's chayim Tevillas.
right. So now there's two.
Shushan put him on here, and then put him on there.
Something like that. So there's two questions. One question you're being marams. Okay, one is like this, and then it's like this. Let's say that it's klei schora. Let's accept the first question. Accept that it's klei schora for the store owner, maskim. But the person who's eating the restaurant, for him, it's a plain old plate that he's eating on. Okay, so what's the din when you have the owner? For the owner, it's not a kli to eat on. But for the user, it's a clear. I'm for sure eating on it. I'm sitting in the restaurant eating with this fork and knife and plate. So what happens now when you have such a case like that? So the Rama talks about it. The Rama in Sif Ches says like this. If the owner of the kli has a kli that he does not use for eating, okay, it's for cutting paper. He has a knife that uses for cutting paper. And he lends it to you or he rents it to you, and you're going to use it for cutting food. Okay, you use it to cut vegetables. Okay, so the owner was not chayim Tevillas Keilim because for him it was not a kli that was meant for food, and for you it is a kli that's meant for food. The Rama says you're not chayim Tevillas Keilim. In other words, you, the user, have no right to decide what the kli is for. The owner is the one who's kaveh what it's for. He has a lach klafim. For him, it's for cutting paper, and therefore for him, it's not a kli. It's not kli that chayim Tevillas Keilim. The fact that you want to use it for food use doesn't make a difference.
But even if you can determine it, is the chiyuv of tefillah on the user or on the owner?
On the kli. No, you can't use this kli. You don't have to title it.
Well, that's a knas. I mean, that was a...
No. It's a mitzvah. You have to title
The
it.
chiyuv, I'm saying, but the isser of not using it was only for the person who is supposed to be titling it. That's why there's an isser. So I'm not supposed to be titling it because it doesn't belong
It's
to
an interesting question. I'm not sure if it's right over here because the question is a need Tevillas Keilim. I'm talking about whether it's an issue to use it. Is a chayim Tevillas Keilim? If I would be able to be, if I
The owner
could.
is not.
So let me tell you the other side. The Taz and Shah say it's not true. The guy who borrowed or rented it is able to be kaveh. It's not just the owner who could be kaveh. If the person who might use it for that, now it's kaveh that is chayim Tevillas Keilim. Now who's chayim? That's the question. Is he a chayim or my chayim?
Your borrowers can't use borrow.
Right. I'm the person. I have the right
No,
to.
my restaurant, I'm not even borrowing it. I'm saying it.
No. What are you doing?
I'm using his daily. Yeah. I'm not renting. I'm not borrowing.
What are you doing?
But you're by somebody's house and you're eating by his house. You're borrowing his fork and knife and his plate.
I don't know.
You're not. You're just he's allowing you to use his. I mean,
I don't know if that makes a difference. I'm not trying to make it. Okay, that's one.
What about just one prop? What about the Jew? Let's say he could convert it. Let's say, but the Jew converted it. Go after who converted to a food kli. Go after the original owner.
So you're saying since both those people are Jewish. Both of them are Jewish.
Something the original. A Jew bought something to cut paper, and the guy sold it to cut paper. The Jew bought to cut paper, and then the next Jew converts it to food. So maybe the guy manufactured it, but I converted it to food kli.
And therefore,
Maybe
But that's not the truth. That's how the say you're mechuyev to Tevillas Keilim. You're mechuyev to Tevillas Keilim, even though you, the Yid, the one who decided that it should be used for food.
You don't go after when it started to be.
What it is, it says it once belonged to a guy. This is the way it works. It once belonged to a guy and now belongs to a Yid, and it's being used for food. That's what it's chayav. Yeah,
down on this.
I believe so. Okay, now the Rav Moshe says argues from a completely different angle. He says no. He says you're getting this all wrong. He says on the presumption that this is klei schora. He says it's not klei schora. He says these plates are meant for eating. That's what the plates are for. It happens to be that I sell food that you can eat food on. But it's not like it's klei schora. I was buying it to buy and sell. I wasn't doing business with these plates. I bought plates for eating on. Okay, the fact whether you're going to eat or I'm going to eat makes no difference. I bought plate. Like I buy a service of 12. They don't say, oh, I only eat on one plate. The other 11 plates are for other people. That doesn't count. That's silly because it's plates for eating. The fact that I'm going to eat on one and you can eat the other one doesn't make a difference. So it's all eating plates for eating. They're not klei schora b'chlal. The fact that he does a business, he sells food that you can eat on his plate makes no difference. Or even if he lets you use his plates for eating, it's all eating. And the truth is, if you think about it, guess what? There's no Gemara that says that klei schora are patur from Tevillas Keilim. How we know that then? Because the Gemara says the only thing that's chayav in Tefillah are things that you eat with. Okay? Keilim that you're going to eat with. And so you say, oh, keilim that you eat with, lafuke, keilim that are klei schora. Okay, well, are these keilim that you eat with? Of course it's keilim that you eat with. What's a plate and a fork and a knife? Of course it's keilim that you eat with. So in the klei schora is not that if I got a special, if you're klei schora, you're doing business, you're off the hook. No, did you mean it for eating? You didn't mean it for eating. So of course you meant it for eating. That's what's meant for eating. The fact that I do business with my eating doesn't make a difference. That's what Moshe says, and which is most people assume like that. And therefore, those kind of things are chayav in Tevillas Keilim. For all kinds of things. There's a side little question about that. What happens if the guy has a dish rental business? That's a little bit of a twist on this. Okay, he doesn't eat on it. He doesn't serve people on it. He rents dishes. That's what he does. That's his own little trial. We mechayed that guy in Tevillas Keilim also. We have a person we give Hashgachah to, what we did, and we tried in Tevillas Keilim. Okay, number 3. Okay, retinning. Okay, what's retinning? If you have like sheet pans or big things like that get used a lot. What happens is with time, the coating on it gets worn away. Maybe you've seen in your house if you have it for a million years. You have a sheet pan, a cookie sheet for a long time. But in a bakery, they use it mamash every single day or things like that. So they get pretty beat up. So every couple months or every year or two, they have to get it. They go retin. What a retin means, they take their trays, they send them to somebody who, depending on what he does, will scrape a layer and add on a new finish on the top of it. Okay, a brand new layer on top of it. Made out of metal. Yeah, a new tin or whatever. I don't know if it is or isn't like a tin, but they call it retinning, and they add a new layer onto it. Now, it has its own child mathematically about whether that kasher is it. Okay, that might be a kasher. It has its own child of how do you make sure you get your pants back. Because from his perspective, he just has to give you back 50 pants. You give him 50 pants, he gives you back 50. Okay, those are kashering shilas, okay? Whether it does or doesn't work for kashering.
You say you're positive in both of them, and you're fine.
You what?
If it's kasher, then you're...
Oh, if it's kasher, then you're off the hook. So here we go. We put two things together. Okay. But for our purposes, the shilah is, I have this pant. I titled it because I bought this baking sheet and I titled it. And now I sent it off to him. So there's a machlokes not about whether it's chayav in tefillah again. Okay, there's a Mizrahi who says yes, it's b'chuyev in tefillah because it has a new layer on it. He says it has a kli, and on top of the kli, they put a new kli. They put this new layer of metal on top of it, and b'chuyev in Tevillas Keilim.
Obviously, because the retainer is a guy, right?
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't say it. Yes, the person doing that job is a guy.
So what's the shot? So why? I owned the kli the whole time.
You own the kli, and now you put a new layer on the kli. So he basically sold me a new layer to my kli. He put on another layer onto my kli.
So let's say I arrange with him, I buy the tin, I buy the liquid, whatever. I don't know what I'm thinking about.
The metal.
What I changed to.
If you owned it from before you put it on, that would be okay. Then it's yours. Then it was yours before it was a kli. But here it's not.
It worked. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, right. The work is
well, there's a question of woman kind of but ignoring that, yes, it was my metal, and then that wouldn't be chayav in it. But here it was his metal that he put onto it. He took metal, turned it into a kli, basically, and pasted it on top of mine. That's what he says. The Practicum says it's not true.
That's called making a kli. You're saying
it's like a new kli on top of my old kli, like a new one on top of mine.
Even though it's just like a thin.
That's what he says. And but the Practicum says what you're saying, which is it's just he calls it lenoi. It's just decorative. Okay, we talk at least on that things that are decorative don't count. and he says it only is decorative. It doesn't add more functionality to the kli. The kli doesn't do better. It just makes it look nicer. And the Mishnah Berurah says you should do Tevillas bracha.
1 second. So why do they retin just for their looks? It's hard to imagine that these bakeries are going to be investing thousands of dollars just because what do they care how things look?
Probably functions better.
Probably shake. So then, but the Pri Chodesh was saying that it's just Lenoi, maybe it doesn't count so much.
Maybe he's
not talking about this kind of a game. That's an interesting point. You might be right. Okay, Mishnah Berurah says to do Tevillas bracha. You're saying maybe you should. It is. I don't remember because on these kind of notes I don't have that. I'll have to look it up afterwards. It's in chapter 16 if you want to look at it yourself. But I have to go look it up. I don't remember. But you were saying maybe it's better than in this case because it's functional. Okay, you might be right.
So what do we do in Leipzig? Because we have companies that do this, right?
So you see, like our bakeries, if the bakery goes and sends out their payments to the retinning, that's a good question. They should tell that bracha.
Only
you said purchase the tinning material.
What's it?
Purchase the tinning
I don't
material.
know if that's a realistic, but I guess in theory. No, but no, like North Shore Bakery, you know, they have pans and they have to send it out for retinning every so often. That's just what you got to do. You have no choice, you know.
Is there a Jewish-owned retinning?
Retinning. I don't know when Rabbi Oppenheimer and I went to the place, it didn't look Jewish on it. Yeah, okay. Our last thing is, I think I lost my mouse. Okay, for this one I'm going to put the screen back on. How do I? Whoops. I want to go back because I didn't want to do that. I want to, sorry guys, share my screen. Some people watching could see something. Till now I haven't been sharing. Okay. Industrial equipment. So now our last thing is you have a factory that has a piece of equipment that's so monstrous that it's not possible for it to fit into a mikvah. Or not realistic that someone's going to take this monstrous sized piece of equipment and get it to a keilim mikvah. So what do? So the practice is in fact nobody titles these things, these big things. And the question is, what should be the reason not to be titled? So I'm going to tell you four possible reasons why you shouldn't have to title it. Okay, the first is, remember I told you last time about electrical things, that there's a reason to say that if it's not possible to title it, then you don't have to. You can use it without titling it. Okay, that is to say is, if you remember I said last time, it's chayiv in Tevillas Keilim, but physically it's impossible to do it. And if it's not possible, so the deraisa, I'm an onus on the deraisa, and the rabbanim of using kli without titling it, it doesn't apply to me because if it's not possible, Chacham didn't insist that I do that. That's one possibility. Another thing is,
obviously, it's those that are machmir definition that wouldn't work because it's not impossible. It's just impractical.
Okay.
You got to crane it, take it.
Okay, that's fine. That's a judgment call. Yes, correct. Okay, next
Very
is
practical, but it's
okay. There's
only right. So
okay. Next is there are if something is only there's a question, a complicated question about what happens if something is only used for storage. Okay, or a kli is not only used for storage, it's used to process things that are raw, from raw to raw. I mean, it doesn't cook them. It doesn't make them edible. When you finish the process, the things are not any more edible than they were beforehand. Okay, this has nothing to do with industrial equipment. We had a question about this a few days ago. Someone had a pasta forming machine. Okay, you put in dough and you squeeze it, and out comes out some pasta shaped thing. But it's still raw when you finish with it. Okay, so depending on the situation, those kind of things might not be in Tevillas Keilim. Also, it's another reason. So sometimes this big manufacturing equipment doesn't cook the food. It just takes it from being a raw state to another raw state, but it's not yet edible when it finishes.
What about beaters in a mixer?
Well, it depends if it makes the food finished when you finish the mixer. Well, so if you're mixing dough, then you might be right. A dough. But what happens if can it mix other things? Okay, and that's a complicated question there. When is it chayiv in Tevillas Keilim? When it's not chayiv in Tevillas Keilim? And if it takes from raw to raw, it's a question. Okay. It's not for now, but sometimes that's a cool also. Another thing is, like I said to you beforehand about the restaurants, some people say all those things are klei schara, okay, because they're just meant for business. They're not really for regular use. They're just to do business with. Okay, again, that's a questionable svara. And the last svara, which is like this. There are those who say like this. In Hilchos Tumah V'Taira, there's a rule that some kelim that are bigger than 40 sa, I'll tell you what, you'll see what that is in a second when I flip the screen, so that are kelim that are bigger than 40 sa are not considered kli. for hilchos tumah v'tayra. They're not considered a kli, and they can't become tamei as a kli. So now now two steps. First is you have to say is like last time we spoke about the halachas for tumah v'tayra apply to Tevillas Keilim also. So if it's not a kli for tumah v'tayra, then it's also not chayv in Tevillas Keilim. That's one step you have to accept. And second is there's a question whether that din of 40 saw applies to metal keilim. Okay, Rabowski did not think so. The question is whether that din of 40 saw applies to metal keilim altogether. Of course, we're talking about metal keilim. That's what we're thinking about. Rabowski didn't think that. He thought that no, 40 saw doesn't apply to that. Okay, how much is 40 saw? So the three main sheets about how big an etzba and an am is comes out like this. These are rounded numbers. That according to Rav Chaim would have to be 20,000 cubic inches, which is 2 feet by 2 feet by 3 feet. Not very big at all. According to Moshe, 31,000 feet. According to Chazon, 35,000 feet. Even according to Chazon, 35,000 cubic inches, which is 2 feet by 2 feet by 5 feet. Okay, and just to help you understand what is, I don't know what just happened to that, is that a standard oven, at least an American oven in your house, is 26,000 cubic inches. I forgot to tell you that when you count these things, you count it from the outside, not from the inside. Okay, you look at the outside measurement. So a standard oven is not big enough according to all these shittas, but a small fridge like they have down here, or a big fridge, and a regular fridge in your house are way bigger. Okay, a regular right, or Ram Chaim it would be big enough. According to other shittas, it's not. But a small fridge is 42,000 cubic inches, and a regular fridge is 65,000 cubic inches, is way bigger than all those shiurim. Just for a perspective of size. So when you look at a large piece of equipment, there's, in a lot of cases, it's going to be, I think I spelled that wrong. I saw on the screen, the board on top. But anyway, in a lot of cases, it's going to be more than 40 saw, and it's not going to be, according to this, it wouldn't be high, that wouldn't be chayv in Tevillas Keilim. I told you, but again, not everyone agrees that that's a heter over here. But according to those who think it is, that's a possibility. Okay, so the people who don't like this, none of these four answers that I gave to you, they don't like that. None of these ideas of why should we pater from Tevillas Keilim. So I have three choices now. One is they could do what Justice said: take it to a lake, take the big thing with a crane and go to a river or a lake today and dunk it in, and that's it. And somehow you could do type like that. Okay, that's one, not such a realistic possibility. Okay.
Well, then you have to make sure that it's not so tight.
What's not tight?
Whatever's holding it out.
The chatzitzas, you see. Okay. You know, when we get to that part,
the water will.
When we get to that part, I think that's what we'll think about. I don't think anyone's ever done it, so don't worry about it.
Shake.
Yeah. Okay. The second choice is, and this is a common choice of people who want to do this, is they'll give or sell a chelik of it to a guy. So they say a kli that has a chelik, a guy has a shutfus in it, it's not chayv in Tevillas Keilim. I just point out to you, just if you keep cheshbon, if you remember the Shach said, if you have a kli that a guy has a chelik in it, he said it's not that it's potter from Tevillas Keilim, it's just chayv in Tevillas Keilim. But since you can't do Tevillas Keilim, so you're excused and you don't have to use it. Okay, so if you do that, remember you didn't gain it because you don't, except if you're Yossi who thinks everyone's possible to take this monster machine to the lake. Most people say, well, I couldn't travel anyhow, so you didn't really gain anything by this over this. Selling him b'chelik may not have gained you much over the saying, oh, well, I just can't travel it. You're in the same boat. It's chayv in Tevillas Keilim, you just can't. So you think you gained. So you have to think you gained because this way you don't have to think about that maybe I could have, if I would have hired a crane, I could have been traveled. Okay, that's fine. And the third choice is, there's a third choice, and that is, if a kli is broken to the point that it takes an uman to fix it, and then we give it to broke it, and a yid fixes it, yid who's an uman fixes it to make it that it is usable, then it's considered the yid made the kli and it's not chayv in Tevillas Keilim. Well, he tried to do that. The guy in Lakewood who tried to do that, yes. That was his goal, was to say, I'm being...
He doesn't have a business. I think he has a business. That's what he does.
I didn't say he doesn't have a business. I think the question is whether what he did was actually successful. Yes, well, he has a business, yes. But in a big piece of equipment, it's easier to imagine it, which is you could break it in a way that takes an uman to fix it, and you have to have, you'll hire a Jew who's an uman who will come and fix it. It doesn't mean who breaks it. It's the fixing that makes the difference. So have a yid come and fix it, in which case the yid will have made the kli, and then it's, if the yid makes kli, then of course it's not chayv in Tevillas Keilim.